chapter 49, the New International Version. Then Jacob called for his sons and said, "Gather around so I can tell you what will happen to you in the days to come." I jump to verse 22, same chapter. Joseph is a fruitful vine near a spring, whose branches climb over a wall. With bitterness, archers attacked him. They shot at him with hostility, but his bow remained steady. His strong arms stayed limber because of the hand of the mighty one of Jacob, because of the shepherd, the rock of Israel, because of your father's God who helps you, because of the Almighty who blesses you with blessings of the skies above, blessings of the deep springs below, blessings of the breast and the womb. Your father's blessings are greater than the blessings of the ancient mountains, than the bounty of the age-old hills. Here we go. Let all of these rest on the head of Joseph, on the brow of the prince among his brothers. Amen. Maybe see it. This morning, I want to use for a subject what blessed looks like. I believe the music ministry, the choir, just said something about every time I turn around, he's blessing me. So I thought it might be helpful to be able to identify what blessed looks like. Probably one of the most powerful scenes in that movie, Gladiator, was when Emperor Marcus Aurelius is having a closing conversation with his son Commodus. Marcus Aurelius recognizes that he is about to cross over from time into eternity. And so he needs someone to whom he can pass the empire to. And most appropriately, most logically, it should have fallen to his son Commodus. However, with tears in his eyes, Commodus is looking at his father and having a real moment of transparency as he is admitting that he's probably not fit to be emperor, that he doesn't have the temperament, nor does he have the courage to really be the next emperor. And so Marcus Aurelius looks at his son Commodus, and Marcus Aurelius begins to swell up and well up with tears in his own eyes. And he looked at his son, and he said, "Son, your faults as a son are my failures as a father." I would just imagine that by the time you get to Genesis chapter 49, that Jacob has the same kind of sentiment concerning his own sons. He recognizes that he hadn't been the greatest father. As a matter of fact, he didn't love the mothers or the wives of his sons as he should have, save for one of them. And in addition to that, he had shown parental favoritism by favoring his son Joseph. And that should have been avoided by Jacob, because he knew what it was like to grow up in a household where favoritism was practiced. Because Bible readers are acquainted with the fact that his mother and father had shown favoritism on him, either him or his brother. And now Jacob had not broken the cycle of the very thing that he had hated. And because he hadn't, what he hated, he now transmitted. Yeah. I feel like I'm alone here. What Jacob hated, he transmitted to his own children. And now he had lived for several years and for several chapters with that regret of not having raised his sons the way he should have. But by the time you get to Genesis chapter 49, he now moves from regretting the past to redeeming the future. Because at some point, no matter how many mistakes you made yesterday, and no matter how many times you turned right when you should have turned left, and no matter how many times you said yes when you should have said no, there comes a time when you can no longer channel energy into regretting the past. You got to know how to redeem the future. Because if my energy is spent on regretting the past, then one of these days I'm going to regret these days. So while I have these days, you got to move. I got to move from regretting the past to redeeming the future. Okay, here we go. All that was for free. So by the time you get to Genesis chapter 49, Jacob, who had been living kind of, at least it's implied, with this sense of regret, now, Pastor Ford gathers all of his sons in front of him. He knows his time is short. And he wants to leave them with something before he goes. So here it is. He gathers all his sons around him, and he goes from son to son, and he begins to speak over their lives. He speaks over their lives. He speaks words of testimony and words of blessing. Words of testimony point back to what had been. Words of blessing speak forward to what can be. So he goes from son to son, and finally, on this morning, he gets to his son, Joseph. You got it? After he had spoken to all of his other sons, he comes to this final son, and he speaks to Joseph, and he speaks words over Joseph. And the words that he speaks over Joseph actually give us a picture of what blessed looks like. Okay. Without even knowing it, Jacob gives us a portrait of what it looks like to be blessed. And I thought I'd just stop by here for a few moments in order to give us a sense of what blessed looks like. And the reason is because I'm not so sure that all of us know how blessed we are. Okay, I know you came looking for something more profound than that, but I'm not so sure that all of us know really how to identify our blessings. So even if every time I turn around, if I don't know how to identify the blessings, I may miss out on what God is trying to do. Sometimes we miss out on blessings because of our crises. Things go wrong in life, things happen, and things don't go the direction we want them to go, and all we can focus on is the crisis, and we miss out on the blessing. Sometimes we miss out on blessings in our lives, not because of the crisis, but sometimes just because of commonness. We get so used to blessings that pretty soon blessings don't look like blessings anymore, because you start acting like you just got it like that, and you just wake up in the morning and you start living life as a resident instead of a tourist. I don't have time to talk about it, but life is better lived when you live it as a tourist and not a resident. A resident gets used to the beautiful mountains that surround the valley here. But I'm a tourist here, so every time I'm here, I am just awestruck by the breathtaking mountains that surround. Look, you shouldn't ever get so used to the blessings that you take for granted what God has put in your life. Sometimes we just get used. Sometimes we don't recognize blessings because of our crises, and sometimes because of commonness, and then sometimes because of comparisons. You start looking across the room, and you don't have what somebody else has, and you don't drive what somebody else drives. Come on, and you're not with who somebody else is with. And so you start looking in the mirror and you get down on yourself because you don't have what somebody else has. I tell you what you ought to do. You ought to forget about what somebody else has and really take inventory of what the Lord has done for you in your own life, in your own circumstances, and stop focusing on what's missing and start focusing on what's present. Can you all hear me? Because I'm not getting any help right through here. Can you all hear me right through here? Let me preach over here. Look, sometimes we miss out on blessings because of our crises, because of comparisons, because of commonness, but also because of this contemporary Christian mindset that only identifies stuff you can see as blessings. Every time we talk about God's favor, we talk about materialism, as that's the only way God can bless you. Now, let me say right off the bat here that God is able to bless you with some stuff you can see. Feels like I'm alone in here. God is able. Come on now. God is able to bless you with cars, houses, and all that kind of stuff. But I need something invisible every now and then. I need blessings come because late in the midnight hour, my heart is broken. My nice car can't help me. My house can't help me. I need joy unspeakable. I need peace that flows like a river. I need stuff that you can't see. I just stopped by here to let somebody know you are, and I don't mean to bother you, but touch a neighbor, tell them I'm blessed. I'm blessed. I'm blessed. And I want to leave here being able to identify what blessed look. Anybody interested in what blessed looks like? Because I want you leaving here celebrating and not complaining. According to Jacob's speech over his son, he says, he kind of implies, number one, that blessed looks like unexpected fruitfulness. Please wake up and hear me. Blessed looks like put it in your head, write it down, whatever you want to do. Blessed looks like unexpected fruitfulness. What's his name? Jacob is talking over his son, Joseph, right? We already identified that. He's speaking final words over him. And Jacob is struggling with where Joseph has ended up versus what he has been through. Because based on what he has been through, there's no way he should have ended up where he ended up. Need three Bible readers here. Based on what Joseph had been through, there's no way he should be doing what he's doing. So his daddy is having a hard time reconciling his experience and his where he ended up. They just don't go together. And I'm looking at somebody here right now who, based on what you've been through and based on what you've experienced, there's no way you should be doing what you're doing. There's no way you should have ended up where you've ended up. There's a contradiction between the hell that I've been through and the blessing that I've landed on. They don't always go together. Jacob is having a hard time. Here it is. So he looks at his son, and look at how he identifies his son. He calls him a fruitful vine. Is that what the Bible says? He says, Joseph, you are a fruitful vine. And notice he doesn't call him a fruitful tree. He calls him a fruitful vine. Because a vine can grow over, around, and through anything, somebody gonna catch it, that has it hemmed in. And that's why he calls his son a fruitful vine. Because there's a whole lot that had Joseph hemmed in. Oh yeah, the jealousy of his brothers. 2 Bible readers, all I need, had him hemmed in. Being sold to the Midianites, had him hemmed in. And then being sold to Potiphar, had him hemmed in. And then the false accusation of Potiphar's wife had him hemmed in. And then being thrown in prison had him hemmed in. And then being forgotten while he was in prison had him hemmed in. But look at where he ended up. He was able to grow over. He was able to grow around. He was able to grow through. And that's why his father calls him a fruitful vine. See, that's how you know you're blessed, is when you've been able to grow above and beyond your limitations. Maybe I'm in the wrong house, but am I looking at anybody here who's ever had to deal with any limitations and life had you hemmed in? But look at you now. Touch somebody, tell them, look at me now. I had to grow over some stuff. I had to grow around some stuff. And that's why none of us should ever have a problem praising God, but particularly people who are of African American descent ought not have any issues worshiping God, because there's a whole lot that had us hemmed in. The Middle Passage had us hemmed in. Chattel slavery had us hemmed in. The disappointments of Reconstruction had us hemmed in. Jim Crowism had us hemmed in. Institutional racism had us hemmed in. But look at you now. We've been able to grow over. We've been able to grow around. We've been able to grow through. That's why I say you are blessed. I think it was James Baldwin in his book, The Fire Next Time, published 1962, who said this innocent nation placed us in a ghetto in which it expected us to perish. It expected us to settle with mediocrity, but we have gone beyond that intention. That's how you know you are blessed. Do I have any fruitful vines in here? I said, do I have any fruitful vine? You don't have to celebrate if you don't want to. Just be real with me. Do I have anybody here who would admit with me, Pastor, you don't know my story, but I've grown around some stuff? Okay, wait a minute. Hold up. He said, you are a fruitful vine planted near a spring. Can I preach what's here? He said, you are a fruitful vine planted near a spring. See, that's why you've been able to be fruitful when you shouldn't have been. It's because of where you planted. Oh, God. Okay, y'all going to make me work this morning. It's all right. Look, because of where you, and do you know what a spring is? It's an underground, it's a subterranean source of nourishment and irrigation that people can't see. So the reason why I grow, even when you don't think I should be growing, is because I got an underwater support system, and it's called the Holy Ghost. And that's why I can smile when I ought to be crying, and that's why I can stand up and lift my hand up when people are wondering, based on all the hell you've gone through, how come you have not folded? It's because of where I am planted. Some of y'all ain't said nothing all morning, but you all just thank God that he planted you in the right place. He says, Jacob's talking to his son, right? He says, Joseph, let me tell you what you are. You are a fruitful vine planted by a spring, and your branches grow over the wall, which means you have low-hanging fruit, which means I've blessed you, and in turn, you're going to be a blessing to some other people. And it happened historically because Joseph ascended to the position of Secretary of Agriculture in Egypt, so that when his family was hungry because of a famine in Palestine, they were able to come up to Egypt. You don't hear me. And Joseph was in a position to be a fruitful vine whose branches grow over the tree. See, when God blesses you, you ought to have low-hanging fruit so that when other people pass by, they're blessed from the fact that you've been blessed. See, some of our fruit is too high and we get too selfish. See, that's how you know you're really blessed, is that you are a blessing to other people. Come on, if God has put you in a position, you ought to help somebody else get in that position. If God has blessed you with degrees, you ought to help somebody else get their degree. Your fruit ought not be so high that it can't benefit somebody else. I'm sorry, I don't mean take all this time, but I want the word church going home knowing how blessed you are. You know how blessed you are. Can I tell you what blessed looks like? Blessed looks like unexpected fruitfulness. Can I make another move? Because blessed also looks like unexplained steadiness. Ooh, I wish I had a prayer. Look. It doesn't just look like unexpected fruitfulness, but according to the text, preachers, is all right there. It also looks like unexplained, like for real, steadiness. What's his name? Jacob is the father. He looks at his son Joseph, who's the son, speaking final words over him. And he says to his son, he says, Joseph, I know that the bitter archers have aimed their arrows at you. The reason why they've been aiming at you, Joseph, is because you've been a recipient of the Father's favor. When you are a recipient of the Father's favor, you become a target of demonic attack. Okay, let me try this side. When you are a recipient of God's favor, you become a target of demonic attack. See, the enemy only messes with people who are a threat to the enemy. So if the enemy is messing with you, that's not the time for you to come to church with your head hung low. You ought to come in here rejoicing and giving God glory, because whatever else that means you must be a threat. I wouldn't brag about the fact that the devil never messes with me, because that probably means that he and I are going in the same direction. But if I'm going in one direction and the enemy is coming in the opposite direction, every now and then we're going to run into each other. Best I can do. Look, he says, I know that the enemies have aimed at you. But here's the blessing. Joseph, you've been steady. Your hand has remained on the bow itself, while people have been aiming at you. Can I preach this here? Sometimes you don't know, you really don't miss stuff until you don't have it anymore. And God knows, I wish I could find President Barack Obama and say, man, can you just come back for a couple of days, or just come back for, okay, I'm sorry. Maybe I'm in the wrong house. Am I in the wrong part of the country here? I wish to come back just for a little while, because I sure do miss you and all that. And there's a whole lot that people have complained about the legacy of President Barack Obama. Wasn't this, wasn't that, issues with Affordable Health Care Act and all of that, and issues with his stance on same-sex relationships and all that. But there's one thing that we can't argue about, and that is his hand remained steady on the bow when the archers were aiming at him. Archers from Congress and archers from Fox News and archers from his own people. But somehow or another, he remains steady. And see, that's how you know you're blessed. Is because you've had some seasons where you should have lost your mind. You know you're blessed when there's some people, they don't even know how close you were to going off on them. But somehow or another, you were able to remain. Am I looking at anybody here who knows you should have lost your mind 5 years ago, who know it should have been over for you 10 years ago, but somehow or another you've been able to remain? Let the church say steady. 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 Now hold up. Now lest we get it twisted, Jacob makes sure that he lets Joseph know why his hand has remained steady. He says, Joseph, it has nothing to do with how skilled of an archer you are. It has nothing to do with some internal fortitude you possess. He says the reason why your hand has been steady is because there's been another hand on your hand. Okay, I don't know what y'all looking for. This is the best I can do. He said there's been another, and he identifies whose hand has been on his hand. Jehovah, the Rock of Israel, Jehovah Jireh, Yahweh. His hand has been on your look. Like so many of you, I went through that traumatic experience of learning how to ride a bicycle without training wheels. You know, that's when kids used to play outside. You know, that's when young people play outside. And for so long, like, you know, I rode the bike with training wheels. And one day my dad came to me and said, no, it's time for you to ride your bicycle without training wheels. And so he took the training wheels off. I was nervous. I was traumatized. I was afraid of falling, skinning up my knees and all of that. But he said, no, you're going to ride this bike on today. And so there I was. I took off on that bicycle without training wheels. And much to my amazement, I didn't fall. Hey, I was steady as I was riding. And back then, people sat on the front porches, And as they sat on the front porch, they were waving and celebrating. And I thought they were celebrating how great I was in being able to ride that bicycle. Until I looked out the corner of my eye. And when I looked behind me, my daddy, who made me ride the bicycle, was with me the whole way, holding the bicycle steady. See, some of us don't know when to shout. You should have fallen over a long time ago, but there's been another hand on your hand. And the reason you can't celebrate is because you won't look back. But I dare you to look back, and you will discover that his hand. Do I have a witness? Is there anybody here who knows you've been steady because there's been another hand on your hand and you've been able to maintain your steady? It's the summertime. I gotta go. Look, all I'm trying to tell you, I want you to know what blessed looks like. Anybody know what blessed looks like? Blessed looks like unexpected fruitfulness. Blessed looks like unexplained steadiness. And finally, blessed looks like unearned graciousness. I'm having fun by myself. Here it is right here. Unearned graciousness. So, I already told you, what's his name? The father Jacob is having a conversation with Joseph. He's having a final conversation. And so now he's concluding the conversation. And he gets to the end of his little speech, and it's almost like the finale at a fireworks show. It's almost like this cascading of pronouncement of blessings when you get to the last part of that speech. And all of a sudden, the father, Jacob, begins to pronounce all of these blessings over his son. He speaks blessings over him. And I don't have time to talk about the fact that when he speaks blessings over him, the blessings actually come to pass because he spoke them. Because the Hebrews believed that words were not just modes of communication, but units of action. So that when you spoke it, it was going to happen. Okay, so he speaks blessings, and the kind of blessings that he speaks over his son are blessings which had heretofore been unrecognized. And that's why sometimes it takes somebody else to tell you how blessed you are. Right. Because you get used to what you got. You get used to who you got. Somebody hear me. And sometimes it takes somebody else to tell you how blessed you. So it took the father to tell the son how blessed every now and then God will send somebody by. God will send something by to remind you of how blessed you are because you've gotten too used to your good health. You've gotten too used to your family. You've gotten too used to your job. You've gotten too used to some of the material things he's poured into. You've gotten too used to your church. You've gotten too used to your pastor. And the more you're around something, the more you take it for granted. That's why new stuff always looks better. Oh my God, I lost the word church on that one. Okay, let me hurry up here. Look, sometimes, and so, all over the country, I'm going to different places, and people are trying to figure out how you get young adults to come back to church, how you get these millennials to come back to the house of God. Well, I'll tell you one thing that would be helpful. If some older Jacobs in this house would pull over some Josephs who just woke up believing that we just got here just overnight. I need some 50-year-old Jacobs. I need some 60-year-old Jacobs and some 70-year-old Jacobs who don't mind sitting down with some 15-year-old Josephs and explaining to them that there was a time, somebody help me here, where you had 2 pairs of shoes and had to put cardboard in those shoes. That there was a time where you couldn't eat filet mignon and you couldn't eat lobster. That there was a time where the only way you made it was because the Lord was on your side. Do I have any honest Jacobs in here? Come on now, some of y'all acting real bougie on me right here, but you know you weren't always living like you're living right now. Somebody ought to be honest and admit that there was a time that me as a Joseph, as a Jacob, was not living as I'm living right now. Listen, he gets his son and he begins to pronounce over him unrecognized blessings. But then he talks to him about the fact that these are unlimited blessings. He says, Joseph, you are blessed from blessings above, blessings from beneath, blessings from around you. In other words, Joseph, your blessings and your favor are not dependent upon what's happening with the interest rate. That your blessings are not dependent upon what's happening in Washington, D.C. That your blessings are not dependent upon what's happening with your employment status. Because even if your employment status changes, you won't lose any weight because the Lord will take care of you. Do I have a witness here? As a matter of fact, Paul said, my God shall supply all of your needs according to his riches in glory. Is there anybody here who knows that God will take care of you beyond your job and beyond your income and beyond politics and beyond economics, that the source of your supply is not based on anything you can see? And that's why you don't have to start hating when God blesses somebody else, because blessings in this direction does not compromise what God is able to send in that direction, because the supply of what he sends is not on earth, but it's in heaven. Yeah, he looks at his son Joseph and says to him that you've been blessed by blessings from above, blessings from around, and blessings from beneath. That's what he says to him. That's what he said. In other words, he says that all of the resources of the universe have been turned in your direction. See, we don't know when to shout. When you are a child of God, the resources of heaven are turned in your direction. Second time, when you are a child of God, the resources of heaven are turned in your direction. Third time, I'm a preacher till you get it. When you are a child of God, the resources of heaven are turned in your direction. And heaven does have some resources, because the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof, the world and they that dwell therein. Do I have a witness here? The silver and the gold belong to him. The cattle on 1,000 hills belong to him. That's why you don't have to be anxious when you go to bed tonight. And that's why you don't have to worry about how bills are going to be paid, because the resources of heaven are now turned in your direction. I got to take my seat. But somebody needs to know that when you are a child of God, God will take care of you. It had to be about 5 years ago, about 6 years ago, I took my daughter and a few of her friends to an amusement park there in the southern part of New Jersey. And you know how kids are. When we pull up to the amusement park, they're all excited about being at Great Adventure. They get out of the car, and you know how children are. They start bragging about how much pocket money they have, how much spending money they have. And the first little boy said, well, I'm all right because my daddy gave me $50 in spending change. Well, then her other friend, another little girl, said, I can beat that because my mama gave me $75 in spending change. Well, about that time, my daughter couldn't say anything because I had forgotten to give her any spending change. So she was walking with her head hung down because she couldn't brag like the other kids could brag. But then something spoke to her, and she looked at both of them and said, I got more money than all of y'all because my daddy is here with me, and whatever he has belongs to me. Take your neighbor by the hand and tell him I'm blessed, not because of what I have, but I'm blessed because of what my Father has. Is there anybody here who knows how blessed you are? I'm blessed. I'm blessed. I don't mean to bother you, but take your neighbor by the hand and tell him, I'm blessed in the city. I'm blessed in the field. I'm blessed in my going out. I'm blessed in my coming in. I may not have all the money that I want, but I'm blessed anyway. My body might be sick, but I'm blessed anyway. And since he's blessed me, I'm going to bless him. I will bless the Lord at all times. His praise shall continually be in my mouth. You ought to throw your head back and tell him, thank you. Thank you for blessing me. Thank you for making a way. Thank you for opening up doors. Yeah.